And the word rivals, for instance, comes from Latin meaning river. The rivals were people standing on either side of the river throwing things at each other.
And you're just going to see more of that as the technology develops to be able to suck water out of the atmosphere. Now you're going to find water from the atmosphere and clouds being stolen.
New techniques for controlling the weather are being tried. When conditions are right, rain is made to fall by seeding clouds with dry ice or silver iodine.
It's happening in China and some other places where a particular village pays for a plane to go up. They make it rain before the cloud gets to the next village. So there's real anger and real political tension.
The worst case is Southern California. And LA is part of what I call hydraulic civilizations, like Rome and its aqueducts was a hydraulic civilization. But there, the longest aqueduct was 60 miles. The longest you have to go, once measured it, is 1,400 miles from the furthest source of water for LA to a home in the town. And LA has not yet figured out what its limit should be. I mean, it doesn't want a limit. In the LA area itself, which is about 18 million, if it was on its own water, it would only be 3 million. First thing LA is going to do is try to put a lot of farmers out of work and close down the farms and take that water. When the water system doesn't work, then the civilization goes. The most famous conflict occurred in the Owens Valley, and Mulholland was the head of the water department there and noticed that it was pretty much a downhill run to LA in the 1920s. And so he got together a whole bunch of investors to divert all the water from Mono Lake and send it down through an aqueduct to LA. It put the farmers out of business, and there was a big, violent rebellion. In 2 different instances, tried to blow up the aqueduct. They partially succeeded once, and then they were arrested, and then they sent in kind of goon squads to get rid of the farmers, and then they paid them off. The last great water war in the United States was 1934, when Arizona sent in the National Guard because California, again, was building a dam across the Colorado to divert the water to California without giving Arizona any. And the ferry captain that took people across the Colorado put a cannon on the front of her ferry, and they went up and threatened the dam. But it led to the Secretary of the Interior to stop the dam.
One of the most bloody water wars is still being fought over the river Kaveri, that farmers of Karnataka and farmers of Tamil Nadu both required more water out of that river. A bandit of Tamil origin, Veerappan, kidnapped a Karnataka actor with the demand that large amounts of water be released to Tamil Nadu. It was really as a chess game in the water wars. I was doing a major study on conflicts over resources for the United Nations University. This fat file of mine on river water conflicts suddenly had no more coverage because the entire issue was now being presented as an issue of religion, not water demands and water conflicts. So many water wars are presented as religious conflicts, when in reality they are fundamental conflicts over resources.
Well, I want to tell you about one country tonight, and that's the country of Bolivia, South America's poorest country. Several years ago, the World Bank refused to guarantee a $25 million loan to finance the investment program of the local water co-op and forced Bolivia to sell its water systems to a subsidiary of Bechtel. The water prices now account in Bolivia for more than they pay for food. Well, I have a story to tell you tonight, and that is that the people rose up in Bolivia.
Obrero industrial, y cuando en Bolivia se privatizó el agua, la gente, nosotros no podíamos concebir que un empresario privado, un inversionista transnacional, podía apropiarse del agua. Es decir, la gente o tenía que pagar del agua o tenía que dejar de comer y por lo tanto no tuvo otra alternativa que decir no a la privatización del agua. Una rebelión popular, una forma organizativa de multitudes de gente que desde los campesinos hasta los vendedores de las calles y empezamos una resistencia. El gobierno sacó al ejército y a la policía para garantizar la seguridad jurídica de la empresa, garantizar las utilidades y las ganancias de la compañía.
And it's really interesting because, you know, the World Bank has imposed the same kind of private control and takeover of many other things in developing countries. Healthcare, education, their energy sector, their mines, and so on. But when it comes to water, something happens and people say, I couldn't stop you there, or I didn't know how, or I thought maybe you would be right, but you are not taking my local water.
Asociados de una abierta complicidad de los gobernantes en ese tiempo en Bolivia, que inclusive se privatizó el agua de la lluvia, es decir, que se prohibía a la gente el acumular el agua de la lluvia.
And this is where you get the civil wars, because the army is brought in to control local dissent against these transnational corporations. Who are you protecting? There's your people without drinking water, and you're protecting foreign investors from North America and Europe?
Más de 100 heridos de bala, numerosos detenidos. Civil, hubieron más de 20 francotiradores que mataron e hirieron a la gente.
17-year-old Victor Hugo Doza was killed by a shot through his face.
See a whole new geopolitical picture emerging here, where the world map will be rewritten and redesigned. They've already mapped out what are going to be the most intense areas of potential conflict in the next 10, 15, and 20 years. So the water-rich areas of the world are Brazil, Canada, Russia.
So these big superpowers are beginning to position themselves in such a way that water, like energy, is seen as part of their future security, including their military security, including their commercial security. And they're beginning to understand they have to secure future sources of water. The U.S. is doing military training around the Great Lakes, and 80 mayors of towns and cities around the lakes have asked the U.S. government to suspend this, but they're not going to. I got involved in this issue in the mid-1980s when Canada was negotiating a free trade agreement with the United States, and the free trade agreement included water as a good. There was a statement made by one of the participants that Canadian water would be flowing to the United States Midwest from the Canadian North by pipeline within 2 to 5 years. Who knew?
And move that water into a crater in the Rocky Mountains, which would be kind of like a huge mega reservoir.
And nobody will stand up in our country to the United States administration and say, this is our water, because they know that the United States would consider that as serious as if we put missiles along the Canada-US border. It just would not be tolerated in the US.
In the new regime, where water is being treated like oil, the protection of that commodity is being ensured through a militarized defense.
And the good part of Brazil sits over top of the largest aquifer in the world, which is called the Guarani Aquifer. This is going to be a major source of fresh water in the future. Very recently, the United States has established a military base located just inside the border of Paraguay. As you know, the United States itself is running out of water. Water is becoming more and more a matter of priority in American foreign policy. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld went on a quiet mission to a number of Latin American places, including Paraguay, to try to see what kind of further advancement could be made regarding the presence of U.S. Forces in that region. Shortly after Rumsfeld's visit, something like 500 special forces